And now, God, open my mouth so that I can speak. Open our ears so that we can hear, and open our hearts so that we can change by your power and through your grace. Amen. Please be seated. Last Sunday, I, along with our choir and many of the members of this congregation, gathered at Valencia Town Center to join our friends from the NAACP of Santa Clarita, Valencia Christian Center, Berean Baptist Family Fellowship, and community members from around the valley for a gospel celebration of Juneteenth, which marks the day in 1865 when enslaved Americans in Galveston, Texas, finally received word of their emancipation, more than 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was issued. It was a vibrant celebration filled with song and prayer and art and community. I think it's safe to say that together we all brought the church to the mall. I think for many of us, though, it felt kind of risky. It felt vulnerable in that wide, open space, and it was victorious at the same time. I sat there and I listened and I watched as this diverse community of people came together to celebrate, to be with each other, to honor a pivotal moment in the story of Black Americans in our country. And we did it all in the mall, out in the open, not tucked away out of sight where we couldn't offend anyone or ruffle any feathers. It felt like a new proclamation from the gathered community to the city around us that we stand against and consider ourselves dead to the sin of racism and oppression, and most definitely alive in Jesus Christ. Yesterday, we had a symposium here on intercultural ministry, where we explored ways to provide space for the many different cultures that shape our city to influence life here at St. Stephen's. Along the way, we were asked to consider what we would be willing to risk in order to create a vibrant mosaic of people sharing with each other, loving each other, and changing each other and our community into something new. The scaffolding of this exploration was built on the foundation of our Christian call as expressed in our baptismal covenant, which of course is also a proclamation of our understanding of what it means to be a follower of Jesus. It seems fitting that our text today is rich with insights into what Jesus wants us to know about what it really means to follow him, and he doesn't seem to be pulling any punches. One thing is for sure, Jesus is clear that fear is holding people back from joining him on the journey. 3 times Jesus tells his disciples not to be frightened. Have no fear, do not fear, do not be afraid, he says. It sounds nice, but not so easy to do. Not for those hearing him then, and not for many of us hearing him today. The reality is that we find ourselves living in a time that seems to count on us living in fear. Every day it seems that there is someone with an office or a pulpit or even just an iPhone telling us what we should be afraid of. We should fear those who are different. We should fear change. We should fear our neighbors. We should fear the world. Perhaps the first step to figuring out how we can move past our fear is to consider the consequences of remaining silent and ask ourselves what's at stake. People of color disenfranchised, queer people harassed, families living on the streets, women's rights diminished. This is what happens when we say nothing, do nothing, risk nothing. Yet oftentimes it seems the world counts on the silence of good people who are afraid to speak out because there is safety in their silence. If I say nothing, if I do nothing and risk nothing, then maybe I can stay safe in my own little bubble. But Jesus doesn't actually call us to places of safety. He calls us to community, to relationship, and to solidarity with those whom the world has cast aside. That can feel really dangerous to many of us. Yet Jesus reminds us that nothing will happen, neither good nor bad, even to the tiniest sparrow, without God knowing. But notice, though, there is no promise that bad things won't happen. Jesus knows that we will face times of trial, that relationships will break down, illness will occur, and that oppression is real. And he reminds us that through these trials will come, though these trials will come, the God who loves us unconditionally, the God who knows every hair on our heads, will never abandon us, and that we have a responsibility to all of this. I think what Jesus is really doing here is taking our fear and reframing it through the lens of faith in God as hope. Through our faith, we can trust that whatever happens in our lives, God will be there with us. Not in some magical, ethereal way, but live and in the flesh through our connections to each other. We can trust that God will reach out to us through the way that we reach out to each other as we strive for justice and peace in the world. All our fear will do will keep us stuck right where we are. Jesus is telling us that this challenging time we find ourselves in is a time to be bold, to step out of the shadows, to speak the truth, to live it out in the world. It's time to take that which has been only a whisper and shout it from the rooftops. We must do this so that we can change the dominant narrative from one of fear to one of hope. And Jesus promises to be there with us, lifting us all up to God's care and compassion as we do it. All of that sounds kind of amazing, but then Jesus goes on to what many of you know I call uncomfortable Jesus mode, telling them that he didn't come to bring peace, but rather a sword. After all that he's just said, why does he tell them this now? Why is it important that we hear this now? I think it's because the truth is that following Jesus is disruptive and it demands things from us. Being a Christian calls us to take action, to do something, to risk something, to change the way we live because of it. And Jesus knows that if his disciples really do this work, a lot of people are not going to like it. Change like this isn't going to come easily. Families are going to disagree with each other, and houses may become divided because of it. You have to have your eyes open to that and be prepared for it. It was critical for him that they understood this. But it was also a commentary on identity. There's so much talk these days about the Christian identity, and there's no shortage of people out there today debating it. But what Jesus is saying is this: if you believe in me, if you will really follow me, then your status as a parent or child or spouse or friend must be secondary to your identity as my follower, because being my follower will inform everything else about you, the decisions you make, the things you do, and how you treat people. That is what true discipleship looks like, and it's a risky proposition. Because we should be clear, Any version of following Jesus that asks nothing of you but maybe showing up at church on Sundays is not actually following Jesus. Any version of Christianity that prioritizes control and might over standing in solidarity with the vulnerable and liberation of the oppressed is telling you from the outset that it's not actually about following Jesus. Jesus' message to us is clear. If we are following him, then we will do the work that he did and nothing less. And we will not do it for our own good, so that we are taken care of. We will not do it solely for the good of the people that we know and love, but for the good of all of God's people. This is hard work, and a great many of us do it because we believe our faith calls us to. I think that's why texts like this are so important, because they remind us that following Jesus is not the easy way. Being a Christian is risky, but Jesus isn't calling us to stand safe in our buildings simply for what makes us happy, keeps the peace, and keeps us content in our own perfect world. He calls us to stand for justice for all people out there. The point of Jesus' whole mission was one of service to those in need, those without a voice, those who had been cast aside and oppressed, not to ensure that those who already had a lot maintained what they had for their own good. And friends, I have to say, I'm not making this up. I didn't come up with these ideas. This isn't new. The people of St. Stephen's have understood this and have been doing this work for decades. And it has the power to transform and save lives. To strengthen us for this work, we're all invited to come to this table with all of our fear, with all of our frustration, with all of our hope and questions and struggle and all of it, and be nourished. Jesus has promised to meet us right here, to whisper love into our ears and our hearts so that we will go out there and share that love. All of this, the risk and the refreshment, is what it means to be a Christian. My friends, the time is now. Go out from here and speak the truth. Love with abandon. Never stop. Jesus is calling us to lay it all on the line and proclaim the unconditional love of God however we can to everyone we can. And it's a lot. I know that. And just in case you may be feeling like you don't have the power or influence to get this work done, I want to take a moment and remind you of the words that I use so often at the end of our services, especially in times of challenge, so that we all might meditate on them, even for just a few moments. May God give you the grace never to sell yourself short, the grace to risk something big for something good, grace to remember that the world is too dangerous for anything but truth, and too small for anything but love. Amen.